Hey everybody, Nick Nack here, back again for another video. So it's the beginning of the year, and as with every beginning, it's time for me to make this video, which as you see on the title down below, this is going to be my top 10 games of 2020. Now, as with most of these videos, let me just go over a couple of rules. 1. These are games I've played last year. 2. It's my opinion. And 3. I haven't played every single big hitter that was released last year. So with that being said, don't expect games like Hades, Ori the Will and the Wisp, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Doom Eternal, and The Last of Us 2 to be on here, because I still haven't played them. With that being said, time for me to begin this video and then rambling. Starting up the countdown at number 10 is Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics. No joke, but this was a game I was looking forward to after seeing it in the Direct, and I tell you what, it did not disappoint. The game's description is said in the title, a compilation of 51 classic games that you can play by yourself or with friends. These titles range from board games like chess and backgammon, to card games like Texas Hold'em and Solitaire, to miscellaneous titles like darts and Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It isn't anything innovative, but this title is just so much fun with just learning about these games and playing them. Like thanks to it, I know how to properly play Mancala and backgammon, and I'm still learning more to come. It also helps with it only being $40, which is a steal. Talk about surprising, as Nintendo didn't price gouge as they normally do. Pretty much I know is nothing memorable or revolutionary, which is why this part is short, but it's a sleeper title that shows that there was more to Switch last year other than Animal Crossing. For my number 9, I'm going with Devolverland Expo. This was a game I didn't expect much of, but after finally getting to it, what a surprise. This is a short and quick FPS with the purpose of advertising Devolver Digital's upcoming games. What made this game work for me was the fact that the setting is a near exact replica of the Los Angeles Convention Center. And as a guy who's went there plenty, it felt relaxing. Speaking of relaxing, the gameplay is very easy to get into as you're just avoiding getting caught by security drones while shooting some of them to temporarily disable them. It isn't hard, and it helps that there is no life system. As stated earlier, the purpose of this game was to promote future Devolver Digital titles, and it does a pretty damn good job at it. About 85% of the game consists from going from one diorama to another and watching a trailer for an upcoming game. These fake displays just look so good, and they have life to them, which is a huge plus. It may be short and way too easy, but if you need a quick and relaxing title that has texture to it and is free, this is a game I highly recommend. Number 8 goes to Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout. I made it a goal not to put time into online multiplayer focused games, but when this one got released, people were talking about it too much to the point that I said, fuck it, time to join the bandwagon, and I honestly don't regret it. The best way to describe this game is if the show Wipeout was a battle royale, and what a great way to get into genre. Each round you go through an obstacle course with the goal of finishing it ASAP, because if you're too late, you get eliminated from the game. it doesn't get boring because each game feels different and it rotates all the time. Also, I think it works with the maps being compact and you see all these players bumping into one another without the frame rate dropping, as was my experiences. Speaking on how it looks, it has a great cartoony art style to it, and the Fall Guys in general are fun to both look at and customize. This game is just a great deal for $20, and even though it has slowed down thanks to the popularity of Among Us, I'm glad it sold millions. Now I just need to hurry up and get a W sooner or later because I'm still at a high number of L's. Coming in at number 7 is Maneater. If there is one game that I think was highly overlooked last year, it was this one. I remember seeing it at the PC gaming show in E3 2019, but didn't have too much interest. It wasn't until hearing more about it that made me want to try it and talk about a huge surprise. The premise and gameplay is simple. You're a shark and you want to eat everything in your path while also getting revenge on the hunter. This game is an action RPG and it has a leveling up and EXP system, but I think it plays more like an open world Ubisoft game, as there are areas in which you complete objectives in it and get to 100%. While it might sound like nothing great, it's actually very fun seeing your character eat small prey at first, then gain levels and higher stats, and go on to bigger, higher level prey. I honestly never got bored with it, because the game didn't overstay its welcome, and it provides a challenge the more humans you eat. Might I also add that it helps with the game being just $40 when it was released? Sure, it has technical problems, but for a price like that, it's well worth it. I've already said enough, so pretty much please play this game. I think it deserves more love than it already gets. My number 6 goes to Streets of Rage 4. After how long, we finally got a new Streets of Rage entry, and I'm happy to say that it delivered. It's honestly a standard beat 'em up, but Lizard Cube has improved on the gameplay and content so much that who cares if it doesn't do anything revolutionary. How has it improved, you might ask? Well, they took the balanced combat of the second game and added some features that make the game fresh, such as super attacks and juggling. As for the content, there's a lengthy story mode with some nice storyboards, a ranking system so you can try and get the highest scores, 4-player local co-op and 2-player online co-op, but what made this game for me are the unlockables, which range from art to music to the sprites of every single playable character in Streets of Rage history. It's a welcome addition and it's pretty fun to see. Speaking of being fun to see, man, the presentation is just so beautiful. I love hand-drawn art, and both the characters and stages are just so good. Also on the presentation is the soundtrack, and props to them for bringing back Yuzo Koshiro, because it can't be Streets of Rage without his music, and each track is just so good. Though some people might be disappointed in it, which I don't know why, I think the game delivered, and for a $25 game, it definitely was one of the year's best. At number 5 is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now unfortunately, I haven't beat this one yet, but I'm halfway done, so I'm confident enough to put it here. With that out of the way, this was a game I was looking forward to, but a bit hesitant at because Square Enix can be such a mixed bag. But so far, I'm loving it enough to say it's a good game. This of course is a remake to Final Fantasy VII, and it does so much things different that I don't consider it to be lazily made. The biggest changes are both the story and the gameplay. When it comes to story, certain plot points are changed and some things are added. I thought most of these changes and additions were good because they fleshed out the world and characters more. Side characters like Jesse, for example, was given the backstory, while side content from NPCs brought the city to life. As for gameplay, the combat changed from turn-based to action, which might sound bad, but honestly, it's surprisingly good. Most of the combat consists of hacking and slashing, but there's so much unique mechanics like stances, switching characters, and separate abilities to where it feels like it doesn't become stale. In addition to combat, the game has the aforementioned side content, which includes side missions and mini-games. It may not be popular among others, but I find them to be pretty nice. Talking about other things, we have to mention the soundtrack if we're talking about a Final Fantasy game, and hot damn, this game definitely deserved Best Soundtrack at the Game Awards because just hearing these remixes of these classic tracks just brings a smile to my face. I do admit that playing it in parts is a bit scummy, but I'm enjoying my experience so far, and they've done a lot to flesh it out. That being said, I think 7 Remake deserves some of the praise it gets. Number 4 goes to Sakura Wars. This was a game that got my support day 1 due to me wanting to show love to other Sega franchises. So after buying it, I'm happy to say my purchase was worth it. This is a new entry to a dormant franchise that has had only one game localized in the West. Compared to past titles, this one feels like a complete reboot rather than a sequel, and honestly, I think it's for best since I bet most people prefer action combat over tactical strategy. Since we're already talking about the gameplay, I have to say it's very interesting, as the best way to describe it is it's part visual novel and part Dynasty Warriors. The game is set into chapters, and the first part of each chapter involves interacting with the world and characters, while the second part involves fighting in giant robots. To be completely honest with you guys, it takes some time getting used to the VN parts because they can be a bit too long, but with time, it becomes enjoyable due to a fun story and charming characters. In this game, you follow a theater troupe that also has the job of fighting demons and giant robots. The story has some really great moments, and the main characters are memorable with how quirky each of them are. It also helps in the sense that I'm an anime fan, and I enjoy all things that make it feel like a playable anime, from the tropes to how each chapter feels like an episode. The Dynasty Warriors combat parts, on the other hand, are a fun and great break to VN parts with how fast and frantic they are. Plus, it doesn't go on too long. If there's one huge plus that the game has for it, it's that the game is just so beautiful to look at, with the stylish setting taking place in an alternate steampunk version of Japan, and the characters having a great design to them thanks to various artists, the creator of Bleach being at the forefront and who did the character designs for the main characters. It also helps with the soundtrack being both pleasant and energetic during various moments, especially that main theme. God, I love the main theme with how it pumps me up. Now I admit, with how it's presented, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it delivered for me. Now, if only some people supported it more, that would be nice. For my number 3, I'm putting Ghost of Tsushima on the spot. Seeing Sucker Punch make a new IP is a great thing, and making one set in feudal Japan tickled my fancy, so I got it on the month of release. If I have to be completely honest with you guys, while this game is good, it isn't that highly amazing as people make it out to be. Still though, I was able to overlook the glaring problems of samey mission structure and open world bloat to enjoy the things that this game had to offer, which is everything else. I'm a history major, so playing a game set in 13th century Japan in which you're a samurai fighting Mongols tickle my fancy. The plot really did for me with just seeing the protagonist descend into violence in order to save his island by using opposite of what he was taught was nice. It just felt like a deep adventure, not only by the protagonist, but the world as well, because it was really beautiful to explore and look at. I mean, you could say it was a character in on itself. Of course, you can't talk about video games without mentioning the gameplay, and boy does it make you feel like a badass. I think it would be best described as Assassin's Creed, but with more features, and personally, I like it. You're given combat stances, and you have to find which ones work on which enemies. It's sweet going through these hordes of enemies, just killing them and liberating areas while upgrading your character with new skills. I also think another thing that did for me was just the little features it had, like changing the presentation and the collectibles. I don't know about you, but seeing stuff like a Japanese dub, a mode where you make it like a Kurosawa film, and little small factoids about Mongol culture is pretty impressive if you ask me. Even though I had glaring problems with it, I had a blast playing this game, and I'm pretty happy that it won some awards. Coming in at number 2 is the Resident Evil 3 Remake. RE2 Remake was one of my favorite games last year, so you know I had to be excited for this one. I picked it up, of course, and I do say it's a really good game that doesn't deserve too much hate. Now, first off, this is coming from a guy who hasn't unfortunately played the original 3. Plus, I'm a newcomer to the RE franchise. With that being said, I do believe this is as good as 2 Remake. It's as good as 2 in the sense that it has the same great things that are good as the aforementioned, such as a great presentation and fine gunplay. Ever since playing their 2 biggest hitters last year, DMC5 and RE2 Remake of course, I do say Capcom has been having some of the best looking graphics last gen thanks to the RE engine, and this one is no exception. The character models look so beautiful and the areas have so much detail to them. I also have to say that the game did deserve the nomination for best sound design because the sounds were so nice to hear, be it the guns or enemies getting shot at. When talking about gameplay, it plays nearly the same as 2, from the puzzles to the damage the enemies take to the gunplay. I personally think it's a great thing as 2 has some superb gameplay that made me think on my feet. If there are any huge differences though, I do think that 3 feels a bit easier because there's a dodging and punching mechanic that made enemy encounters more avoidable. Speaking of avoidable, unpopular opinion here, but I think Nemesis not appearing as much and it being scripted compared to Mr. X being there all the time did make the game a bit nicer for me. I do also think he had some damn good boss battles as well. Also on characters, I have to say that Joe and Carlos were pretty good characters that had some nice dialogue. I know fans of the original 3 hate this game because of what they took out, but for newcomers like me, it was good to the point that became my game of the year for a while. That was until my number 1. And finally, coming in at number 1 as my 2020 game of the year, I have to go with 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I have to admit, I got sucked into hype from people here on the internet, so I bought it in the month of its release, and man, I'm glad I did, because this title deserves the praise it be getting. This game is an interesting combination of both a visual novel and a real-time strategy game that surprisingly works real well. The RTS parts involves taking up to 6 out of 13 characters and have them fight in a small area. Each of the characters plays different with their skills and movement, and the game has a rock paper scissors like element as with most strategy games. Unfortunately, among many people, this is the weakest part of the game, and sad to say, but they're right because there's only a handful of battles that have some depth to them. But it's not extremely bad, as they're fast and easy, which I personally like. Heck, I even enjoyed upgrading the characters as it's done differently and not the usual leveling up system. This is just only one part of the game, as the main drive of why people love it comes from the visual novel gameplay. Now I admit, the visual novel parts took some time getting used to because they feel like long cutscenes, but they're well worth it. This game has been praised to high heavens for its story, and I think is well deserved for how intriguing it is. You go through the adventures of 13 characters via small episodes and explore how they're affected by an upcoming threat. There's elements of time travel, robotic apocalypses, preordained love, and much more that all intertwine into one big plot. It also helps with it being told in a non-linear structure, as putting the various episodes into one big thing is pretty interesting. On top of that, I found all the characters to be very interesting, and I think none of them were one note. Another factor that might have helped with this game being so good is the presentation, and since this is a vanillaware title, you'd expect some beautiful graphics, and this is no exception with how nice the world and characters look. Surprisingly as well, this is one of not if the only vanillaware title I've heard people praise the soundtrack for, and hot damn is the music so good. The tracks during the RTS segments make these battles more exciting. I have to give a mention to Seaside Vacation especially. Anybody who's played the game will know what's up. I've pretty much talked about this game enough, and I don't want to take away more of your time. All you just need to know is that the love of this game is for real. And to echo nearly everyone online, please support this game. So those were my favorite games of last year. As usual with these videos, let me know what games were your favorite last year, or what you think about the games I've played this year. That's all I have to say. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching, take it easy, and until next video,